So welcome to this week's episode of Ducking Reality. Today I got my girl Brenda here. What up, Brenda?
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so here's a question to start right off the bat. Is it okay that I just said my girl Brenda?
You know, considering that I see it as GRRL when you say it, all good. But thank you. My pronouns are they, them.
Yeah, because I knew you before you started to transition, maybe? Or at the beginning of it?
I just wasn't so public about it.
I was going to say, I'm sure it was going on for a long time, but when I met you, you were still very female presenting.
Correct.
And then, so I've been kind of on this little journey with you, distantly, but on it, and it's been fun to see you kind of blossom and open up more, and it's been interesting and educational.
Well, I'm happy to have been able to have provided that perspective for you as you've watched me grow and develop into who I am as a person.
It's been fun, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And I mean, you've got to see me grow too. So.
That's true. That's true.
We've been growing kind of together, which is really fun and nice.
I agree.
To have like a space that because we met at one of the bars that I work at, and we've become friends over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've had some really great, really deep conversations because we all kind of tend to be kind of really open, and I don't know, the Fireside has just fostered like this place of women and other people and a community of like finding your passion and growing and kind of leaning on each other when it's hard and being there to cheer each other on when it's good. And it's really become a community of just a really diverse group of people that I don't know how it works, but it works really well.
It does. I think we all just care about each other and we're invested in the personal growth of our friends. And I think you're right. It's turned into, we might be like an eclectic kind of bunch, but we all have things in common, and it all borders on friendship, family, with the intent to be honest and real. Because I think we're all at that point in our lives where we're done with the bullshit and we don't want to have like only surface types of relationships. We all want to delve into who are you as a person, because as the older you get, it's like the harder it is to make connections. And the more that you've been burned by people in the past, lovers, friends, family, what have you, and I think you get to the point in your maturity where, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to start building the family that I want, but I'm not going to be a people pleaser anymore. And if you can't accept me for who I am, then maybe you're not my person. And I think that's the reality that we all bring to each other in this crew.
Yeah. And a reminder that if someone's not your person, that's okay.
That's right.
And that's, I think, kind of our biggest, because there's, the bar isn't just all of us that are friends. There's tons of random people and strangers, and, it's a nice mix. There's people that hang out there that don't ever talk, but are there at the same times all the time. It's like regulars that just don't know each other, don't have an occasion really to chat. Like it's a hi, how are you, but not a deep thing. But there is such a base of us that are like, I don't know, I guess somehow it just
works.
It works, yeah. And it's just the timing, and maybe it is all of us are around similar ages. It's probably like a 10, 15-year gap, maybe even a 20-year gap at times.
Yeah, some of that is true.
But it's like everyone's kind of in that same phase. You're right about like, all right, I've tried it all the other ways. Now I'm trying it my way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's okay if somebody isn't your people. It happens all the time. And we are drawn to the people that we're drawn to. People are drawn to us for very much the same reason. The only thing that's not okay is not to like people as a direct result of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that a lot of people don't think about that when they're like, yeah, I don't like this person. And my question is always like, well, why?
Right.
Right? Is there a reason for that? Or, if you just don't mess with that person, that's cool. Just don't talk shit about them and move on with your day. I think we have to hold a certain modicum of respect for the people that we meet, and then understand within ourselves what draws us to people, certain people, I'd say, and what, maybe repels us from certain people. But then just keep respect on the table.
Right.
And just be like, yeah, that person is so-and-so. I just don't vibe with them. And you don't have to vibe with them. But what you do need to do is be kind and be compassionate and be nice.
Yeah. Common courtesy.
Correct.
Like that has seemed to gone out the window.
Yeah. Not with us, though. I think that our crew's done a really good job about holding space for everybody, regardless of if we vibe with them or not.
Yeah.
And you're right. So. It brings that magic to the bar. It brings that magic to the Fireside. And for, those listening who aren't familiar with our island, Alameda is a small community. So the people that you're going to see in one bar, you're going to see them in the grocery store. You're going to see them in another bar. We're a very small, close-knit community anyway, where if you're not friends with that person, somebody is.
Right.
You're going to see that person again and again, especially when you're in the same demographic.
Yeah.
age-wise.
And that might be true. Like, that's true here in the, like, on the island, but it's really true everywhere. Because, like, even
Fair.
in huge cities, like, you talk to someone in SF and, like, they don't leave, like, a 4-block radius most of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Or, like, in Boston, it happens the same way. Like, people are in their neighborhoods and that's it. So, like, you go to your neighborhood bar, you see the same people.
Yeah.
You go to this bar down the street, you see, like, periphery of the same people. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that guy's actually friends with that guy who hangs out at that place. So it's the same everywhere because the world's not really that different.
Meaning that we're just all interconnected. We just haven't met everybody yet.
Yeah.
7
Which
billion
means, like,
people.
Yeah. So be nice because, like, your friend, the dude you probably don't like is probably friends with someone else that you do like.
Right.
Like, and that person sees other qualities that you don't, or a different side or whatever. And that's cool. Like, just fucking chill out, people.
Exactly. I agree.
Like, yeah. But so we're getting kind of into the good stuff, but tell us a little bit about you, and because I don't know a lot about, like, your history. I know some, but I don't know all of it. So give us like what's your origin bar, who are you story?
Oh, okay. My origin bar story. All right. So I'm from a town called Mankato in southern Minnesota, and my hometown is known for being kind of a place of pain for Indigenous Americans. And it's actually the place where 38 Dakota plus 2 were hanged on order of President Lincoln in 1862. And so as a result, I come from a place where if you're white, which I do identify as, we know who had the land before us. We knew who coexisted with us. We had Native friends, you know. So we had the powwow, which commemorates the hanged people, as well as honors the community. And there's been a lot of reconciliation efforts, including a ride which happened for like 20 years of the descendants of the people who were hanged. This was the final ride, and I'm so sorry I didn't get to see or be a part of it. Because in many ways, I mean, I'm a descendant of the original pioneers of Minnesota. My family settled there before it was a state, when it was still occupied by Indigenous peoples.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, honestly, I think that a lot of us are in that kind of situation, and we need to also be aware of reparations and what that means for our Indigenous communities, especially now as we're dealing with the residential schools and what happened with the children there. So that's basically the land from where I come from. And born and raised in Minnesota, I literally went to college in the same town I was raised in. I was very happy with that decision. I was very happy there. My college years were really great. Then I became a single parent. I'm a mother. My son is now 24. He's a great guy, great person. But at the time, I had a lot of pivotal changes occur to me in my 20s. And then when my father died, it was on July 4th, 2005. That was a real big watershed changing moment for me. And I recognized that, you know, I don't want to live in Minnesota. I've been here my whole life. At that point, I had already been living in the Twin Cities metro area, which is about 2 hours from my home. But I was going home to Mankato a lot. I mean, it really is, you know, was serving as home for me because, like I said, that's where my people settled. And I wanted to have something new. I wanted to get out. I wanted to get away. And so I applied for a role in San Francisco. That was like over Memorial Day weekend of 2005. And I remember coming back to work on that Tuesday or whatever, we came back and the folks were like, yeah, you're qualified. We want you. When can you move here?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was it. And I remember coming home, and I had been laid off from my existing position. I was working in Minneapolis for a copier and fax company. And I was cleaning apartments where I lived to, you know, make extra money. And I remember I got laid off from both jobs that same day. Oof. And that was sometimes the world, how do I say it? So I have this saying, like, sometimes the universe aligns perfectly. Like,
Yep.
I believe, too, if a space doesn't want you to be there anymore, occurrences will conspire to, like, help move you or motivate you to move on. And that's when I decided I was going to leave. And I knew I was going to leave. And I knew this was going to be successful. I could already feel myself, like, separating and distancing myself, you know, from the land I was, you know, born on. And sure enough, they went ahead. The new employer paid for my relocation.
Amazing.
They paid all my moving costs. And so I ended up settling with my son in an apartment that I had never seen before in South San Francisco at Westboro and Callan. There's a nice little apartment complex up there by Skyline College. And that's where we settled in.
Wow. That's like a big, just trusting in the universe. Let's pack
I knew
up
no
and go.
one.
Right.
Except my son's father and his wife at the time were here. They were actually the people who scoped out the apartment to make sure I wasn't moving into a dodgy nor sketchy area.
Oh, that's
but
good.
I knew nobody here. I guess if you asked me, would you do something like that again? My answer would be a big emphatic no, because when you move someplace, it's especially when you're a single parent, it's really difficult to form community. And I remember being really sad for a really long time. It was so difficult to get my bearings and find my feet. And plus, California was so much different from where I was from.
Yeah, I can imagine that's
Completely different.
Yeah.
You know, the people demographics different. The food is different, you know, but it was having this entire path and this entire world open up for me. But it did take a lot of time for myself and my son to get adjusted, especially me.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. And it's hard I always think, because, you know, when I moved here too, like I knew one person when I moved to California. And then when I moved to Alameda, I knew no one.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this is close to where I'm going to work.
Remember we talked about that.
Yeah. I'm like, this is close where I'm going to work. There's a beach I can walk to. Like, what the fuck else do I need? I'm in.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll do a year lease and then I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And then it was the pandemic. So everything was closed.
I remember.
And so I would run by the fireside because it was on my way to the beach. So, or walk. I don't really run. But I'd walk by the fireside like all the time, and I'd be like, "This place is just called like this. There's something about this place. Maybe eventually I'll work here like 1 or 2 nights when the pandemic is over."
Yeah.
And then the pandemic was ongoing and ongoing. But eventually, once it opened back up, I was drawn to it. So I met Sandy through like 3 different people in a weird way, and then she was like, "Why don't you come in and we'll talk?" And it's kind of been, I guess, happily ever after since
belong to
then.
us now.
Yeah, like now I'm like there is literally my blood in that bar.
Right? Well, you know, one of the most reassuring things I was ever told was by a coworker when I was still adjusting and getting used to being here. She looked at me and she said, "You can always go home."
Right.
And that's the thing that you don't think about when you've made all of this effort to move yourself and set up a new life. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And you have to honor that space and that voice when it turns out that that decision might not have been the best one for you.
Yeah.
And it caused me to reflect upon my decision to move here and the why. And I realized, yeah, I belong here and I'm going to stick it out. And I did. And wow, you know, that's been 17 years.
Wow.
17 years I've been here now in the Bay. And I've lived in Alameda for 12 years. I moved here in January 2010.
Nice.
Yep. And I moved here because my very best friend, Melissa Ring, lived here. And Alameda was her hometown. And she was a grade school teacher. And she's like, "Brenda, you should leave San Francisco," because I moved from South San Francisco to the Richmond district of San Francisco. And I lived there with my son for, you know, a few years. And Melissa's like, "You should just come over here. Alameda's great. The rent is great. Haha." And I did, and I'm glad I did. Melissa passed away of Ewing's sarcoma in 2012, and she was pretty much my heart and soulmate. And you know, it's a rare kind of cancer. Usually, kids get it, and you know, here she is in her early 30s, and she just developed this cancer, and she fought so hard, and she didn't want to go, and she didn't want to go. And, you know, some of the best memories in life actually do surround the death process. And I think we should talk about that more as a society and as families. Some of the best memories that I would never trade are ones of me climbing into my friend's hospital bed because she couldn't walk anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, and just holding her as she cried and she grieved the loss of like what was going to be her life. She was a young person. I mean, with older people kind of reconcile, I think, that they're going because they've lived enough life. But for young people like us, I think that it's different. It hits differently. There's so much more you want to do. And Melissa loved life and she didn't want to go. And, you know, but she had to go.
Right.
And being in Alameda keeps me closer to Melissa. It really does. And I appreciate having that connection still in my life. Connects me to her.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's, I'm so sorry for that loss. And
Thank you.
That is really young to go through that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that loss is one of the reasons you also are more apt to say, like, fuck it, I'm going to live the way I want to and how I'm happy? Because you know, kind of, you've seen how short life is and how precious it can be and how kind of senselessly it can end.
I think you're onto a good topic there. I would also define loss as being a loss of anything. It could include opportunity, right? It could be, people who lived in poverty or have been the subject of institutionalized racism, people who are never given a chance to be more because of the environment or their circumstances or because of money. It's okay to grieve those losses. And yes, I do think that they define you. I think there's a decision in yourself about who you're going to be. But in the end, we're only given the tools that we learn, right? And so I feel like the more you align yourself with good people, you might learn better tools. But the reverse applies if you're aligning yourself with the improper people too. You could be learning about coping mechanisms, which are, bad for you. And that's where life gets hard.
Right.
I would say for me, I've seen a lot of different kinds of things. I do say that loss of opportunity, loss of people have absolutely defined who I am as a person, coupled with my personal choices. And honestly, this desire to be the best possible version of myself, right? I think that you need to want to be a better person to get there, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because I think the people that I meet that are kind of happier in life are all people that are doing some kind of work. You know what I mean? They're trying to, if they didn't get the tools when they were little, they're trying to figure out what the tools are now.
Yes.
Like they're seeking growth. They're trying to do new things. They're like, oh, my life isn't working out the way I want it to be. And instead of just being miserable all the time or like numbing the pain in whichever way someone wants to numb their pain, because it's not a judgment. It's just like, be honest about it, kind of, and not everyone can. And I understand that. I couldn't for a long time in my life. Like I was numbing. It's not something I like to admit, but it's now looking back, like I probably could have taken some steps earlier to fix my situation, but I wasn't there. Like
you have to be there.
And you have to be there. And I wasn't in my life in order to save it, And, but no one else was going to save me. So like I had to show up in my life eventually, or else I probably would be not having this conversation.
But thankfully you had like the wherewithal to be able to, and had the strength to do that. And I would say like for most friendships and relationships, you really do have to meet people where they are.
Right. And sometimes it's really hard.
It's extremely hard. And sometimes folks might walk away from building a connection because they might see that person isn't ready, or maybe they're not ready. You never know what's happening for anyone at any given time. That's why I always feel like you progress in steps and not all at once, because you just don't know what's happening for that person or for you as you're exploring yourself and your connections and how you see the world.
Yeah. Because I know, like, when I see someone like you or someone that's changing their whole, I don't want to say whole appearance, because it's not, I mean, it is, but it's kind of the way the world views you is changing. And some of me is so jealous that I don't do something like that, but it's also like that. It's not that, but I don't mean just your gender identity. I mean like your tattoos, your hair. Like, when I see anyone that's covered in a sleeve, I'm always like, oh, I love that. Like I want one. But then there's so much of that I'm still afraid of the judgment from even like growing up or my own family. Like tattoos were like a no-go in my house growing up. My mother was like, if you got a tattoo, you can't live here anymore. And I like honestly believe that, because my mom was not, my mom was rough. But so, I mean, not as rough as others, but like she was a hard ass. So like, I was like, oh, if I ever got one, like coming home was never an option again.
Yeah.
And that just to me was so silly, because it's like, why is something I do with my body that kind of weigh so much on who I am as a person? Like my amount of tattoos has nothing to do with my value as a person or whether or not I'm a good person. Like those two things aren't mutually exclusive or intertwined.
Right. I think it's a generational thing. And to give some perspective, I got a couple tattoos when I still lived in Minnesota. And the thing to understand about my family is my father exerted a lot of control over my life, especially with me being so young. I was in college at the time and I had this son. And none of those jobs are paying all that well. So I was going to college and working part-time, and I had no money. I was broke. I couldn't afford to fix my car. Nothing. And my father was a very controlling individual.
Were you living at home when you had your son at first?
I was not.
Okay.
No, my parents live in the same town. Yeah. So they were like across town, and I was still living there. So, but what happened was my father totally disapproved of my tattoos. Absolutely disapproved. And one time, my major was social work, and he drove me to the grocery store. Pulls up, Brenda, I want to talk to you about your tattoos. I was like, oh, Lord. And he's like, he was afraid that I wouldn't be able to join the army.
Was the army anywhere on your radar?
No. Robert, my son, was probably like 2 years old. My father, to understand, my father was in the army, and he was in the Korean War. He also did like a lot of work with disabled veterans and initiatives. And so I grew up around my dad and a bunch of veterans. I pretty much grew up in like the VFW and Morse area when I was really small. My father would bring me to the bar when I was like 3 and 4 years old and sit me in a chair. I would drink Shirley Temples and scratch off and do pull tabs and do the little scratch offs.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of conversations with much older men who were going through PTSD moments or saying to me, my God, you know, and share a war experience about children that a 4-year-old shouldn't be hearing. So I'm very used to that, the demographic. And mostly this was like Korean and World War II vets, you know, men who would just like look at me all sad and start crying because I reminded them of some like point in their life that was really traumatic for them. So I guess that's my hometown bar. No, I didn't go to the bar for a long time. Like I could not stand it because every time, and sometimes a part of me, like I would walk in and all I remember are just like old men holding my hand and crying. And I remember saying something to my parents. Now, my parents aren't boomers. They're the silent generation. My father was born in 1934 and my mother in 1936. So, and I told my parents, my mom looked at me and shrugged and said, that's war. So I was expected to hold space for these people.
Right.
You know, and there is that people pleasing part, right? That kind of got built into me. And I avoided bars for years.
Yeah. Well, the children are to be seen and not heard, kind of.
That, and we're supposed to listen to the stories that our elders give us because that is reality. That is the way that this works.
Yeah. That's a hard one. I don't disagree. No. I don't disagree, but I don't agree.
I don't either. And I never, you know, when my son was born, the last place I would ever think about bringing him would be the bar.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
No, yeah. And my grandfather brought me to the bar with him when I was young. He had stopped drinking when I was a kid, but he would still go to the bar. So we would pull up stools and we would both have root beer floats and he would shoot the shit with the guys and bet on his ponies and do his thing. And, and one of my uncles was a Vietnam vet. He was, injured in Vietnam. And he was a 3-time Purple Heart and he had some crazy stories, but after he got shot, he was paralyzed from the waist down. My dad would take me over to visit him, and we would sit around while he drank beers and smoked cigarettes and told me about his battles.
That's actually kind of cool, okay?
But I would be like,
that's kind of cool.
But I was like 4 and 5, and like he's telling me about the Battle of Quezon and like killing, you know, and using the language of the time and just like, you know, and tracing rounds going over his head and being like, what's a tracer round? Like, you know, like he would get into these stories and I like, you know, all the time my dad would be like, that's just Johnny. And I'd be like, Dad, I don't know if I should be hearing some of these stories.
That's pretty ironic that you and I have a parallel experience with veterans. Wow. I've never met anybody else that has had this happen to them.
And when you started to tell that story, I just was laughing because I'm like, it's one more thing that we have that kind of an odd thing in common. Yeah.
Dang it. It's like, why don't you tell me this stuff when I'm 12? You know, when I'm really like wanting to hear it. Because as a little kid, that stuff is kind of terrifying. You don't have any context for it. And half the time my dad would be off wandering and I'm sitting with, you know, with this guy. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Right. I think this led up to like 3rd grade. Like my parents brought me, my mom wasn't a big drinker, but my dad was. But it wasn't until like maybe the last 4 years of his life where my father did go completely sober. But he did what your grandfather did too. He literally would drive in and have a NA Budweiser, you know, or those old Milwaukees in the green can. And he would just sit there and, you know, talk to his friends. And then he would drive home at a reasonable hour. Yeah.
We would go and like do this route. He had a route that he would do, and I don't even remember what he would deliver. Even if he delivered, he was a mailman. But I think after he retired, he used to just drive around and see his old people.
Oh, I love it.
And his dog was always in the passenger seat. And then like every once in a while, when like both my parents were working or whatever, I'd be at my grandmother's house and be like, "Let's go, kid," and be like, "All right, I'm going with Papa." Like, and we'd be off for hours and like stop here and there and go to the bar, and then we'd come home.
Oh my God. I love that. I
So-
think everybody was so happy to see your grandpa.
Oh yeah, he was like, and he was a big, heavy, like jolly guy, and he was really. I mean,
Oh.
we have some great stories about him because he was an undiagnosed or self-medicating bipolar person.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a huge alcoholic for a long time. So there's some
probably why.
stories that aren't really funny, but then there are other ones about him like being manic and like trying to catch angels and doing these things.
Right.
And it's like, what? And when my family tells them, they're just like laughing. And now, now years later, it's all joy. But I'm sure back then it wasn't all easy. Well, I know it wasn't, but you learn and you grow and you turn to look at those times that were hard with kind of a sense of humor now. Like,
You do? Yeah.
The worst, it's kind of like you said with death, like people don't talk, like at least in our family, when someone would die, like every once in a while their stories would come up, but we never really talked about it. And that drove me crazy.
Right.
Because I would always want to talk about it or them or whatever. Because I'm like, the people, if we stop talking about them, then they're not here.
It keeps them alive
Like-
when we share their stories and tell their names.
Yeah, and I didn't get like the hurt of it, and that's when now I can hold space for however someone needs to deal with losing someone is how they
Right.
deal with it. Because I would get really frustrated, like, why do you get mad at me for bringing up so and so because they died? Like, and it was too painful for those people to talk about it.
Yeah.
In just the same way it was painful for me not to. But you have to learn who you can kind of share with and who you can't, and you just have to honor what someone can and can't do.
That's really true.
And it's sometimes really hard.
It is. Some
And, like-
people want to talk about it. And it's just like hospitals. Like sometimes I've met people who will not go to the hospital. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're dying. It doesn't matter if their mom is dying. It does not matter. They can't go. And it's usually like it's some type of trauma, but it's about that person. And I literally had this conversation the other day with someone who didn't understand why this person couldn't go to the hospital. I'm like, sometimes people just can't.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they don't love you nonetheless. It means that there's just something in their brains and they're associating like a hospital or like even the event of a death with such trauma and pain that they're unable to cope or adapt to the situation, and aside from excusing themselves completely from it.
Right. And I think we have to kind of give those people the respect of they don't owe you a whole explanation. If someone says like,
don't.
I can't really do that. Like, I'm sorry, I can't. I know it might upset you. I can't do it. Like they don't, that's it. Like,
It's a boundary.
yeah. And we all have to kind of get better at respecting those, I think. Because all of us want to know, like, and understand. I'm so nosy and I always want to understand, like, why someone did something
Yeah,
or
me
how
too.
they did it or what made them do that. Just because I want to understand. Not because I think they owe me an explanation, but just so, like, what if that comes up in my life, then I can look at it from those different ways or, or even just understand that person better. Like,
Yeah,
that's because of whatever happened. And they're like, oh, that totally makes sense. Now I can be more sensitive to that, But I think it's human nature to want to know
I think so
and
too.
to feel like you owe someone that you're involved with owes you an explanation.
I think it's also human nature for us to see people through our mental models. It's when people tell us who they are, it gives us more information in which to base a broader understanding of them. But it's also within us to assume that everybody operates the way that we do. Being an autistic person such as myself, I've really learned the hard way that that's really not the case. Being neurodiverse is like, we're kind of like a subculture that doesn't have a subculture. You've got the ways that we see the world and the signals that we perceive from neurotypical people, e.g. people who are not autistic or ADHD or who don't apply on that spectrum of neurodiversity, is like trying to understand the signals which are communicated, between people. Sometimes, for example, like facial expressions, body language, I don't read. Even now, like, I have eye contact and sometimes I don't. And that's comfortable for me. But the world of people is difficult. And I always find that I try to use my words and I try to ask. I do. I try to ask people because I don't understand and I want to understand them properly. And I wish that we did more of that for each other. I think that on a larger scale, a larger sense of the situation is we see so many people, pushing things onto others without asking them if that's something that they'd be wanting to do or if they're, they want to partake in that instead of just holding space and listening and asking questions. right? That person doesn't go to church. Well, why ask them a question? If they say that church isn't really a part of their lives, okay, leave it alone.
Right.
Has nothing to do with you if you're a churchgoer and all of that.
Right. Or if they're not interested in it, like they're not interested in it. Maybe ask them a different question.
Yeah, find some other way to connect. But then I find that, people can be really judgmental if that person isn't into the same interests as they are or doesn't want to do the same things. And I've just never understood that at all. I've never understood that. It's like, it harkens back to what we talked about, like finding our people and being okay with people who aren't our people and leaving them in peace.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't understand when someone is like, well, you can only, like, I like this, like, I like comedy, so you can only like comedy. Like, why?
What kind of comedy? What's
Well,
funny to you? Define humor.
Right. Or it's like, I like to go rock climbing, so I can only date and be with people and friends that are rock climbers. It's like, wow, okay, that's good on you, but I'm not going to climb rocks because we met, like.
That sounds like a dating profile thing. I am looking for rock climbing partners only.
Well, I mean, some dating profiles basically say shit like that.
They do. That's looking at you, Tinder.
Oh God, it's awful. I hate dating. I've had some really terrible ones lately.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. The only way to know is to go and try, right? I've met some interesting people. I've met some people that I'm like, how do you tie your shoes in the morning?
Oh God, did you meet any new friends? I have met friends off dating sites, so.
A couple, a couple that like we've been out on dates and we're like, oh, this is not that vibe, but like I would definitely come and hang out.
Yeah,
which has been nice. But I haven't done a ton of dates. It's been mostly guys that just want to hook up, and I'm like, no, thank you. It's like seems like it's decent, and then it's like, so like what's your hair situation like? It's like,
oh my
what?
God,
like,
please explain. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, or like, you gonna send me some pics? Like, no, like if I wanted to put up pics for guys again, I'd have an OnlyFans. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
well, let me know if you want any pictures of either of my hairless cats.
Oh my God, that's perfect. I do.
Yeah, I'll send you a couple. So audience, I have 2 hairless cats. They are named Deja and Rue. Get it? Ha ha ha. Deja Rue. And they are Sphinx. They are the hairless varieties, even though all Sphinx have like some degree of fur on them. So anytime friends get like harassed about sending pics of, unmentionables, I'm like, here, have a picture of my naked pussy. I have 2 naked pussies.
Oh, that's amazing.
That usually shuts that shit down. Okay, like this person's body has ways of shutting that shit down by sending you pictures of my naked hairless cats.
I love it. I definitely need one of those. I've gotten a couple of unsolicited dick pics. I've gotten a couple of guys that have been like, do you want to see what I'm working? Like, we're kind of chatting, and then it seems like, oh, wait, that's all they want is sex. I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, and then they're like, well, what do you want to see what I'm working with? Like, no, sending me a dick pic is not going to make me all of a sudden be like, yes, I want to hang out with you. Like, dude, your personality lost me, not your dick. I'm
like, so impressed by that. Said nobody wants that.
One guy sent me a picture of his dick, and I was like, he was like, that's my dick, just so you know. And I was like, yeah,
I thought it was your father's. Wow.
I was like, yeah, there's not really a question on what that is. And he's like, some girls think it's my back. And I was like, I don't know what you're trying to say, but that's just stupid.
Is this one of the candidates who couldn't tie his shoes in the morning? Because I
didn't even meet him because I didn't go. Like, if you send me a dick pic within the first, like, if I haven't seen it in person, I don't want it on my phone.
Blocked.
Like, unless I explicitly be like, hey, yeah, like, send me a dick pic.
Oh
like,
my God.
It's not my thing. I know some girls like dig it and they're after it and like that works for them. Good on you. But like, I don't know. Maybe I haven't been dating long enough. Maybe it was like I missed that window.
For all the men who are listening to this, do better.
Yeah.
Do better.
Yeah. Like I've talked to a couple of chicks over the things, and they're not sending me like titty pics like out of nowhere, and I would actually appreciate that. Like,
right. I'd much rather see that too.
Like, wouldn't everyone? Boobs are just fun. They're fun,
right?
I mean, that's a hot take, I guess, but. All right, so you had just moved to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. You came over to the island. And then at what point did you, I guess, had you always known that you might transition? Like,
I didn't. So I would say that I've been queer my whole life, and I had like a personal renaissance myself when I moved to California. So like when we were just speaking about tattoos, I mean, I had tattoos that my father never saw. I always had a shirt on, and they were always covered. But when I got out here, that's when I started to get heavily tattooed, you know. And at that point, I had pretty much left my family of origin. I didn't have anybody to judge me or complain about me anymore. And then that gave me just complete freedom to just like, you know, be the next incarnation of who I was supposed to be. And it wasn't long after that. It was February 14th, 2006, when I finally took my unruly hair and I dreadlocked it. And I wore dreadlocks for 16 and a half years. So now, I mean, I have short hair, but a lot of what changed in me was how my body was responding to getting older. So, you know, I'm 47, I'll be 48 this year. And another one of the things that, you know, femme presenting people, especially women in older generations, don't talk about is menopause and how that really just destroys you. So I'm having that particular battle myself. Like you know, all of a sudden I went from being a size 6 to a size 14 in 2 years. And my breasts, which I've always had problems with having, went from a 36A to a 36 double D. Like all of a sudden, wow. My body picked a gender. And I just it brought out the dysphoria for me, right? And like, I'm not transitioning into being male. I'm not taking testosterone or anything. And I think that when folks look at transition, they see it as being, you have to pick a gender. You have to be male or you have to be female. And maybe the common examples of transgender people reflect that. I'm not transitioning to being another gender. And the thing is with transgender folks, you don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to transition. You don't have to go through hormones. You don't have to have top surgery, which I got a year ago last February. If you're not feeling comfortable with the gender that your body has assigned you, you're free to go off and explore what about your body works for you. So for me, I identify as non-binary. I really don't see myself as being neither male nor female. And when I was growing up in the Midwest from a very conservative hometown where Trump actually campaigned twice, sorry, I'm not a Trump fan, I didn't have the language for that. There wasn't the population. There wasn't the demographic to have those conversations. I wasn't able to freely be a queer person until I moved to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that was probably right around 2001, like when I graduated from college. So environment changes. This is why sometimes getting out of your hometown is a really good thing. So you're not stuck in the same atmosphere all the time. You got to move out and you got to see other people. Traveling, you know, travel as much as you can. I definitely needed to have these perspectives because it helped me start to define who I was. But at the time, I was pretty comfortable with my body. I was thin enough. My breasts weren't heavy. You know, my breasts weren't heavy. They were small enough. I felt like it was enough.
Right. You were comfortable where you were.
I was. But things change. And I would say that the big motivator for me was starting to get older and going through these physical changes, which did not like align with the person who I saw myself as being. And also, I came to an autistic diagnosis later in life also. It's funny because the psychiatrist who did my assessment was like, you know, a lot of autistic people like are genderqueer people. It's kind of like we just don't really see gender as a binary. Like, I don't see a definition of male and female. You can occupy both spaces, and it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't really matter. And what matters is how do you feel on the inside? You know, I mean, I cut my dreadlocks off because, well, the opinion about white people having dreadlocks is changing. I didn't have those to, you know, appropriate a culture. I have hair that doesn't work with like white hairdressers or white hair products. And it was like that from the moment I was born. So I never had a great haircut. I wanted to have long, pretty hair like other people. And so I ended up putting dreads in. And for me, it worked. My hair was controllable. I didn't have a problem.
Right.
As I was starting to approach menopause, all of a sudden my hair was starting to get thin. on top of all these other physiological problems that I'm having. And one day, and since when I came back from Burning Man this August, I was decompressing in Lake Tahoe and I went to touch my head because I felt an itch and it hurt. And that's when I knew that they needed to be cut off. It was literally a split-second decision where I woke up, nudged my girlfriend, and was like, I'm going to cut them off. And I did. 3 days later, I cut my dreads and have a short haircut. So I'm kind of exploring like who I am now. You know, I'm approaching my 5th decade in life. How do I want to be mentally and emotionally and physically? You know, I'm grappling with, menopause health issues. I can't lose any weight. I weight train twice a week. I've been eating right. I have lost 0 pounds. So I'm in these real, and they tell me, oh, your hormones look great. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I get through this? So sometimes you just enter different facets of your life and it makes the change for you. I had top surgery, like I was saying, last February. I regret nothing. I also removed my nipples because my nipples were always painful. I couldn't breastfeed my son at the time. I didn't like them being touched or handled. And even the surgeon was like, do you want them off? And I said, do I have a choice? Really? And she said, yeah. Somebody gave me a decision and they gave me more information. And I said, take them off. And I regret nothing.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what made you do top surgery and not just like a breast reduction?
Excellent question. And I did explore breast reduction first. They couldn't get me back to a B cup. They said that the way I was built and the way that my breasts were structured, they could get me to a C cup. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Then I realized I didn't really want breasts at all. That information led me to the transgender department, and I asked if they do top surgery, and they did. They're like, yeah, no problem. Of course I had to go in and talk with a psychiatrist about about my gender dysphoria, and where it lives. For me, it's my breasts. And having those resources there really helped me redefine who I was gender-wise and as a person. And I think that at this age, it's never too late to transition. And I have really good friends who are in their 70s who started transitioning, who are in their 60s. And the most common thing I hear from them is, my regret is I didn't do this sooner. And when I take a look at my particular journey here, mine's right on time. It really is. We didn't have this language. We didn't have these concepts. We didn't have these resources or the conversations. Now, because of Gen Z kids right now, Gen Z's doing it right. Millennials are doing it right. People are beginning to make transgender issues emergent. Unfortunately, a lot of that's happening at the cost of their own lives. And we really do need to protect trans kids. They're precious, There's nothing wrong with being a transgender person. There's nothing wrong with being a non-binary person. It's okay not to claim a specific gender. And I like to think that in time, if we keep communicating and applying resources to families and to transgender resources, that we're going to be able to help fix the problem and help transgender people become more mainstream in society.
Well, yeah. And I think if we stop and maybe this is kind of a little Pollyanna, but can it just be kids issues and not trans issues? Because and I don't, not to take away from, but to do it more inclusive. Because I think, and I don't know how to say it in kind of the most probably delicate way, but because when kids go through transitions, they have to go through therapy, right? They don't. I'm not because I know for a long time for adults, if you wanted to get any kind of surgery or medication,
you have to.
You had to go through all these hoops.
You do. And
I don't know if that's still going on because I have not done enough research to speak as eloquently as I probably should. But to hear some of the rhetoric and the propaganda that goes on, it's a kid just says, or someone just says, oh, now I'm this gender, and it flips. And to me, it's always that hasn't been how it's traditionally happened, so it can't be how it's happening with kids now.
No, it's...
And I think if we just could make mental health more accessible to everyone, to get therapy, and not saying that a kid that's transgender, just a kid that wants to be transgender needs therapy, but all of those people involved needs therapy. Because, it's the parents grieving the loss of what they thought their child was going to be and the life they've probably imagined. And that's something that, when kids are little, we do need to hold space for. And then it's that kid has to be able to explore themselves and develop and learn and figure out what works for them and what doesn't in like a safe environment. But that should be all kids and not just, do you know what I mean? Like,
I get what you're saying.
But I guess that's really like I said, it's kind of a Pollyanna way to think about it. But like, if we could just all do better, like maybe we'd stop losing kids.
Well, I think
because there'd be more safe places for all the kids. Like, I mean, especially transgender kids, because right now they're being attacked and that's terrible. And no one should be attacked for what makes them happy. If they're not hurting anyone, they shouldn't, like, why do you care? That's...
Well, conservative people are bringing the argument of, well, yeah, I mean, this kid just says, well, that they're a man now and they're going to have hormones and we just give it to them. Remember,
that's not true.
Remember, they said the exact same thing about abortion. Oh, women could just go off and have sex and get pregnant. And she just says, oh, I want an abortion and I don't want to be responsible. It's literally the same argument packaged differently. And the truth of the matter is nobody's just going to give a 7-year-old child hormones, right? But they are going to work with the family to see what options the family and the child really want to go through. And it's proven that if a child starts to take the hormones before puberty, they're able to pass better, especially if they're male children.
But is passing
born male?
But is passing what is important?
No.
And I don't, because and one of this is like, I always feel like this is kind of a dangerous place, but I'm really genuinely care. Like, are we giving kids hormones too early? Like, we don't know long-term effects of that. Like, if someone wants to be
I'm not any kind of doctor or anything like that, but I can say that if somebody wants to discontinue using hormones, they can at any time.
But I'm just saying, like,
with no effects to them.
Does it scare? And like I said, I don't know enough research, but like, and I don't have kids, you know what I mean? But like, it scares me to give kids drugs. Like, I don't even think girls should be on birth control before they're a certain age unless it's because it's medically necessary. Because hormones change you.
They do.
We know that
That's
now.
what they're supposed to do.
But we know that now, like, but they change, like, women in different ways. Like, women will marry men that they weren't actually, like, pheromonically attracted to because of the hormones. Like, when women go off birth control, sometimes they will be repulsed by their partner because had they not had those hormones, they would have never found that person attractive in the first place.
That's
that's research. So like, that's like the medical side of it. So that's the only part of this whole thing that gets me like a little worried, is like the changes my body went through when I had with hormones that I had to have as a kid. Like, there was all this stuff that we had to like talk about and go through, and it still wasn't like good enough then to have put me on some of that shit. And like, or like, had they just listened to me and done, like, okay, I couldn't get a hysterectomy when I was a kid because I wasn't old enough to make that decision. And it was medically proven to be necessary. If they had taken out my uterus, I would have been healthier. That was not allowed legally because I was not old enough to make that decision. But from what I understand now, a kid can go in and say, I don't want to be a girl. You can just take it out, take my uterus out because I don't want to be female. And that happens. And that scares me.
I think there's some
I
think there's some other diagnoses involved in that. Like, you literally have to have like a gender dysphoria, like, diagnosis in your chart. I do. And like I said, I can't speak for the experiences of parents with trans kids because I'm not a part of that. But I honestly, based on my personal opinion, I don't see the problem with if a child wants to transition when they're a young person and their doctor and their mental health team and their family, and if everybody's on board with it, I don't see a problem with it.
Oh, I don't really have a problem because it's not my business. You know what I mean? Like,
but I see where you're coming from.
I do
from
worry
that medical
for the medical side of it. That's what I worry about. Like, what are we doing, putting stuff in kids' bodies that we don't know enough about? Like, it's not my decision whether or not a kid. That's not any, but I do. That's my concern. Like, when someone says it to me, that's always like, oh, I don't care. It's not my decision. It's not my kid.
There's also the studies show that most children who are transitioning absolutely know what gender they were supposed to be as small children. That is also, it's also a question of timing. Instead of like letting kids go through the puberty process of the gender that they were assigned to, that they don't belong in, why don't we start correcting this from the beginning and getting them on the right course of hormones? At least that's my take on it. Because it's when you talk about hysterectomies, I mean, women who are in their 20s and 30s can't even get a hysterectomy.
Right. That's what I mean. And that's the only example I could kind of pull from, because it's the only one that I can like kind of draw from my own kind of experience. Like if I wasn't old enough then to make a decision that was medically supported, you know what I mean? And not saying that if a kid's therapist and everything is signed off that that's not medically supported, it is. But what I'm saying is like there was no doubt in that kind of question on whether or not I would be healthier without a uterus.
Right.
Like there was, you know what I mean? It was just the government being like, no, you're not old enough because you're supposed to have babies.
I don't even know if they're giving elective hysterectomies to trans people either.
I don't either.
I mean, having the amount of trans friends that I do, who are female to male, I haven't heard of one of them having a hysterectomy. But like I said, this is limited to my personal scope of friends and experience, and anything I'm saying, folks, should not be reflecting the whole transgender community. It just reflects my opinion and my support, of my community.
Right. And I'm just asking questions and saying, and because I am in full support of transgender.
Oh, I know you are. But there's a lot of questions like this, especially like being cisgender that, folks don't understand. And then we hear a lot of sensational stuff in the news about, they're letting kids do this and this. And I'm like, no, I think these are very nuanced situations that we have to understand and start taking an unbiased look at the research, which is existing out there. Like having trans people in your life really helps ameliorate a lot of these situations and these, the mental anguish that people go through. That would be my suggestion for everybody, is have more trans friends. Right. Don't just have people that it's like that one token friend. Have trans people in your life, because that way, you can ask your trans friends. I always recommend like doing the work yourself, right? And going to Google, so we're not asking people to do emotional labor. Yeah. But when I mean like ask your trans friend, it's like, this is okay in the scope of this conversation. But sometimes I'm like, hey, person who's had this particular procedure, may I ask you a question? Understanding that if they tell me no, they don't want to do emotional labor for me, that's just the way it's going to be. And I will respect that boundary, and trying to come with information saying, well, I was looking these things up. I'd like to ask your perspective on that.
Right.
You know?
But don't do it with a stranger. Like, unless like, you know what I mean? Unless you're like, you've met that person and you like have developed kind of a rapport. Don't just walk up to some random trans person and be like, hey, I've done some research and I want you to talk to me about this.
I mean,
because don't do that to any fucking person.
Understand. Yeah. I mean, that nobody wants to be put on the spot.
No.
Nobody wants to be put on the spot about gender related questions. No. And stuff like that. But I really liked a point that you made, and you were like, and it had to do about passing. Like, is this the point of doing this, is to pass? And then I immediately said no. And the reason is it's that there's like I said before, there's no wrong way to be a transgender.
Right.
None. You don't have to pass to be a transgender. I know that with kids that they want to like switch the hormones because then they will have a better chance of passing, especially if they may have more masculine features. But no, you don't have to pass in order to be
right. Well, I didn't think so, but like, and that's why I kind of wanted to ask that, because I didn't think so. And I have I have a few friends that I know are probably in the more non-binary than full transitions, but I have a friend or two that have done full transitions, and some of them you would never know. Like, and that's great. And people are always like, oh, well, she passes so well. And it's always kind of around.
Yeah, I know.
And so when people talk about putting kids on medications, like, well, and they're like, well, so like it's easier for them when they're older. And I get that that's a thing, but is that like the only way? You know what I mean? Like, so then if kids didn't get meds when they were younger for whatever reason, and they're not passing as they got older, is that like going to be now like less of a trans, you know what I mean? Like, are we now doing a hierarchy of how trans you are as how close you pass? Like, isn't that what we should be getting away from and not getting more of?
It's kind of like that in what I've experienced, like in the trans community and observing it, is it can be a hierarchy like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, okay, but
this person passes, and there's like different, like, it's like a hierarchy of like the people who pass versus the people that don't. People who are on hormones and people who aren't. People who had top or bottom surgery and people who didn't.
Right.
I feel like in some conversations, this turns into be real contention between people. And in other contexts, it's not. I mean, I've had people say, well, non-binary people aren't transgender. Well, the white stripe on the trans flag actually indicates otherwise. That stands for non-binary people. And I think it's important, but there are people who will say no, and they'll say, well, this journey is easier for you because you look female, right? You didn't transition. And I've seen this happen. I've seen it on TikTok. I've seen it within communities where these conversations are indeed real. And let's not forget the interplay of race. You know, like Black trans women, Black trans men, you know, race absolutely plays a part in this. So there's that hierarchy. And then we have it for Black, Indigenous, people of color that needs to be considered in the white queer conversations concerning transgender and queer issues. We need to really like maintain space for Black and Indigenous BIPOC voices. I remember asking one of my friends for her opinion. This is my trans friend, Zoe. She lives in Minnesota, very dear to my heart. We're talking about like her process when she transitioned. And I just said, Zoe, would you consider me being trans? And she asked me, well, how do you see yourself? I remember that. We're just like sitting there talking about this. And she's like, and I said, is it okay for me to claim that space? Would you, because I'm transitioning into non-binary. So it's still a transition for me, as you correctly identified. But there might be people in my community who might not see non-binary people that way. And there are others who do. Right. So I always believe that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to gender identity within the transgender community. And that's my hot take on the whole matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would agree, like, as kind of a outsider but ally, is like you would think in a community that is kind of prejudiced, like, you know, like in danger all the time. Not all well, yeah, lately all the time. Like, you would be more kind of inclusive instead of setting up the hierarchy that exists in all the like, and it just goes back to like we're people, so like we just get into our
people. Like it goes back to what we were talking about, right? About how people understand people as they are, not as who they are, because it's in the human mind. It's in our nature to classify people and to put them into little boxes so it makes sense for us as we're going about our day.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that we need to constantly be aware of, you know, as well as white privilege within queer communities. We just do, because we're not making progress if we don't involve Black and brown voices, Asian voices. You know, we're not. It's the same thing with feminism, or with any other major issue applying to the world. And I think that that's what the world's trying to tell us. It's trying to wake up and say, hey, you know, America, this place is based on slavery and institutionalized racism, and we're not going to take it anymore. And our voices and need to be included in all of these issues. And I think it's high time for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I think Kirkland and I just spoke about this, about how like, I'm like, it has to be getting better, because like there has to be more of us that think the way like we do, like that. You know, you hold space for people. If you don't like someone, like you don't have to love everybody.
Right.
Or, you know what? You do have to love everyone. You don't have to like everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to like everybody. You can have people that you don't really want to interact with at all. You can have people that you don't interact with at all. But that doesn't mean that you need to go out of your way to make their life more difficult.
Exactly.
Don't interact with them.
Right.
If you don't like what they look like, you don't like what they do, like, don't look at them. Go do something else. Go somewhere else. Like,
if you can't help people, don't harm them.
Right. Yeah. Like, I love that. Because it takes more effort to be an asshole than it does to just walk away.
A lot of times that's how people assert dominance over the powerlessness in their own situations, is by thinking and acting like they're better than other people.
Why is that part of the human condition?
Well,
like, I honestly, I mean, not that you're supposed to have the answer to that.
I have a whole
then I
other
wanna hear
hour
it.
of answers about how I believe that, you know, late stage capitalism has, you know, pretty much destroyed the opportunities for working class and poor people, especially people of color in this country. And they've pitted us against each other in order to grapple for resources, which are dwindling because the 99% Trump and all these other people of his ilk are sucking up all the resources. They absolutely are.
Oh, the world is owned by like a handful of people, basically.
There's no reason for the people to be living in poverty. There's no reason for homelessness. And instead of dealing with the issue, we just see more NIMBY corporate architecture, more people being disallowed to park their RVs on the road. We're seeing the people just be more excluded. And that does improperly and disproportionately affect Black and brown communities. And it drives them out of the areas in which they're traditionally living. Like San Francisco, for example, Oakland. We're pushing out the people who actually live here, just like we pushed out the native people of this area as well. And disenfranchised people who don't have a voice, it doesn't end well. No. It doesn't for any of us, right? And if there's one thing that I could see, it would be for people to stop picking at issues between each other and start recognizing that our elected officials are the problem, our government is the problem, and that we all need to work through our differences as a citizenry and start aligning against, or shall I say, holding our government accountable and putting them, holding them to task. We want to make them accountable for the social problems that are going on in this country. It's not just us. And that whole framework of rugged individualism is really what's destroying our communities. We don't really have communities anymore. We just have all this whole Karen phenomena, people turning on each other, people not wanting to help each other. You know what, guys? Community starts with you. It starts with you. You can make a community. You can build a community at any time. Yep. But it might mean that you have to take a look at other people through a different mindset and a different mental model and try to empathize and create compassion for people who are telling you, for example, hey, I never had reparations because my family were enslaved. That's actually a real thing. I would really encourage people to take a look back at history, at the Harlem Renaissance and Reconstruction, post-Civil War era, and take a look at how we got here, because we never did the right things after the Civil War. And all it did was disenfranchise a lot of Black people, and we took their wealth, we destroyed their communities, we lynched their people, and then we hid the evidence. And that's why we have a whole bunch of people coming back to us and saying, we're angry. We want to have the same rights as the rest of you, because there are two Americas. There's one judicial system for whites, and there's a different judicial system for Black and brown people. And it's really high time that we start handling that in order to be a better community on the state, local level, on the national level. It's the only way America is going to heal. It really is. We need to do the work. White people need to do the work and understand what white privilege means. It's not an attack on you. It's an attack on white supremacy culture, which is exactly what America was based in. Because think about it. All you white people out there, you're from Scotland, you're from Ireland, you've probably, for most of you, you've probably been here long enough to not realize that your ancestors, just like mine, my people come from Norway, you all had to forget your language. You forgot your culture because your families subscribe to the white supremacy culture, which is what America is absolutely based in. It's why we white people have no culture. Mm-hmm. It's why we take cultures from other people who came here and maintain that culture. I don't speak Norwegian. Norwegian was taken away from my mother when she was 2 because the family wanted her to be American now. Nobody spoke Norwegian. Nobody spoke about the old world at all, because we're all Americans now. Mm. But what did we trade that for? Lost the language, we lost the culture. What are we supposed to go back to? Because America's full of all these different cultures. So what do? We confederate in being white. And then we built this system that enslaved a whole bunch of people to work for us and build intergenerational wealth. And then we didn't do anything for reparations when we freed the slaves. That's the real problem with America. I'm not exactly sure how we got here, but
Podcasts, they're tangents. That's what they are. But I love it. And you are so you're so passionate about your, the politics and becoming better and doing better. And you're out there, and because you've been to the marches, you're very active. That's what I was trying to say.
I try to be. I mean, y'all, I'm not perfect. I mean, I have white privilege. I have my own issues. Being an ally to marginalized groups doesn't mean that you achieve this status and you're there all the time. You're working on it all the time, because I'm repeatedly saying, you're seeing the life through your experience. You're seeing through your mental model. My mental model is, I'm a female born at birth, female assigned at birth, white person. I will never, ever have to struggle because of the color of my skin. Ever. There are so many people who have a different experience. having white privilege doesn't mean that you're not going to suffer less at the hands of poverty, because poverty kills people. It kills all of us. It does mean that I don't have to deal with poverty and racism.
Right.
So it means I have one less problem to fucking deal with in my life. I don't have to worry about people discriminating against the color of my skin, because everybody pretty much looks like me. Don't have to worry about being followed in the grocery store or being profiled or being randomly pulled over or shot by the police department because they think that I match the description of a person of color, because a lot of times people don't pay attention to facial features and they think like all black people or all brown people look alike. I don't have to worry about that. That's white privilege. That's the stuff that we need to be aware of in the work that we're doing and in the community building. And we also need to make sure that in the work, the allyship, we need to make sure that we are including our black and brown compatriots. Otherwise, this isn't going to work, and it's not fair nor just.
Right. I like it. It's a good, strong message. And it's true. At this point, I don't know how in the world, unless you're kind of trying not to, I don't know how you don't have black and brown friends. Like, unless you live in an area where, you know what I mean? There are some parts of the country that are still very much
that's very true.
White. And like, if you live in an area where you have like one black family, like not every white family in that town can be friends with that one black family.
It's geographic. I mean, honestly, it is geographically based. I mean, we have more in California. We have the privilege of having more diversity present every day in our lives.
But yeah, if you live in a city or you live in a huge town where it's like diverse, I don't know how you wouldn't have friends at this point that aren't.
I'm inclined to agree.
Like, if you don't, it's probably because I don't know. Are you still talking to the same 5 people from high school? You know what I mean? Like, and if you are and you're socially awkward, then good on you. But like, try to make a friend online, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
people have friends online that they don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's not a way to not have someone in your life that is of a different ethnic, sexual, gender. Like, you should have diverse friends within your group.
Right.
Somewhere.
Yeah, you absolutely should. And, you know, I was watching this film last night. It was literally about like Native American issues. And I realized like a lot of the people here in California, I've noticed, like I was saying at the beginning when we first started chatting, was that people don't know about the land they come from. Right? We're all on stolen land, people. This belongs to the native people. We're just settling it. Nobody's a native of California unless you were actually natively, Americanly, indigenously living, existing, and born here. But a lot of the media depicts Native Americans as being like diminished or gone by at least like, you know, around like 1880, 1890. Because there's a lot of folks in California who don't think that Native people still exist in the world and in the country. And I find that so odd to me. You know, there is this performative justice measure going on where there's this lookup tool where you can say, hey, do you know if the land you live on is indigenous? You can look up this tool. And I'm like, doing that without like actively trying to learn about that culture and those people or donating financially to their tribe is just wrong. You can't just post something on Facebook and say, oh, you know, I live where the Arapaho Indians, you know, existed and this is their tribe, and you know, showing them the map of the area. That just seems so false. Like, it's just weird, and it hits differently, I guess. You know, if you really want to know where you're from, attend a powwow. Look up issues pertaining to the tribe, donate to their GoFundMe. There's always a lot of tribal initiatives, especially related to land and water, especially with like, look up the Land Back Initiative. Right? Look at the residential schools, you know, to be familiarized with the issues and be prepared to ally. Right? Don't take over issues for any group of people, but you know, if you want to be involved, ask the tribe how you can be involved. Hey, I see that you've got this march. Is this something that's open, you know, to white people? Ask people of color how you can be a good ally. Don't take over and co-opt their voices. Ask how you can be involved. It might be that you go to something and they say, you know what? We're going to be having people rise up to speak. As a white person, please don't speak. Be prepared to deal with that and be okay with being told no. A lot of times white people aren't told that no is the appropriate answer. And we feel like we need to get in there anyway and make it all about us. It's not about us anymore. Being an ally means we're listening and actively taking part in issues and asking what we can do, not assuming that we know what we need to do for others.
Yeah, and being okay with the no, or like this event's not for you.
That's
but
right.
This one is like.
Yep.
Then
That
you don't
exists,
have to go to every event. Like,
Exactly.
Just like you don't want, sometimes girls have ladies' nights and they don't want boyfriends, or
Right.
guys have got, you know what I mean? Like it's that same thing. Like it's not, they're not trying to hurt your feelings. They're not trying to exclude you. It's not reverse racism, because that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Like it's just that's not your event. It's kind of like when some people aren't for you, like,
Right.
And
folks, reverse racism doesn't exist. That message repeats, because the thing is, white people are the dominant culture. Remember, I was talking about white supremacy culture. White people are the culture here. We run the schools, we run the churches, we run all of the infrastructure pretty much. So you can't really be racist against the dominant culture. It doesn't work that way.
No.
And that's exactly why it doesn't work. We run the world.
Poorly. But we
albeit poorly.
So now that you're kind of are you comfortable where you are? Like, you don't have any more surgeries planned, right? Because you're not transitioning. You've transitioned into non-binary, and that's where you're comfortable now.
I am. I'm figuring out what hormones look like for me. I had an appointment with my psychiatrist to kind of explore testosterone to see if I could microdose. I don't know. I don't know if that's something I feel comfortable with doing.
What would
What would T do?
Yeah, yeah. If I could get that out,
Sure. Well, the thing is it doesn't matter what your dose is. What matters is what the side effects are. And so they told me, they're like, it'll take you longer to have the immediate side effects, but they do include vocal changes, right? My voice would drop, losing my hair, should I have male pattern baldness. And then there's like other like physiological changes. And I really wasn't sure if that was stuff I wanted to accept at the time. So I'm kind of like speaking with my specialist at Kaiser to see what the combination of hormones looks right for me.
So would you be taking the T for the appearance changes, or would you be taking that for a different reason?
I actually did it to try to solve for the menopause issues I've been having, because I'm kind of at a crossroads. Either I take estrogen or I take testosterone. I really didn't want to go on estrogen HRT because, well, colloquially speaking, every single person, including my personal trainer who I've talked to, has said, yeah, my mom got cancer. Like, all these women are getting cancer from HRT. And I'm like, I'd rather, you know what? I would rather be me. I'd also rather be fat. It doesn't matter. I don't want cancer. There are so many more important things to consider health-wise than just like aesthetics. And to be honest, for me, I like I was saying, I'm not a guy. That's kind of what that conversation was for me. Like, it's okay to explore options and get more information. You don't necessarily have to do anything.
Right.
Right. And so the psychiatrist and I had a really good conversation, and I needed to do it because I needed to know if I wanted to transition into being a man. And my answer ultimately was no, I'm still not a guy.
Yeah. I
don't think that that's something that I want to do right now. I don't want to have to, I think that would be very stressful for me. So that's why, like, non-binary gender-wise is absolutely real. I feel very comfortable here, but I'm not intending at this time to, go forward with any other modifications. I feel okay about who I am right now.
Well, that's good, because I feel like you're in a really good spot, and you seem really happy lately. And even now you'll know how many months ago it was, but we were a few months ago, you were having a really bad day, and you were talking about how you wanted to find someone, and you were just like, I'm just tired of being alone. And I was like, I get it. Like, but I don't know how do you fix that. And
right.
We had a really great conversation, and it was kind of gave me the first moments that I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I am almost ready to have someone and not just avoid
Yeah.
an actual person in my life. And then the next thing I knew, you have a person in your life.
Yeah. That's a pretty good story too, because I feel like also like my person chose me. Right. And so, I'm dating a burlesque performer, Sergeant Device, and, she's a Black woman, and she's pretty fantastic. And, the funny thing is, I had a Hinge profile. It was newly created. It actually worked for me. And here I am with like my hair. I had dreadlocks at the time. And one of the things that I posted as a picture was my reading list on how I'm dismantling the white supremacy that I grew up in. Like, how am I being a better ally? I literally posted 5 books about Black history.
Okay.
In my dating profile. That's why she swiped right.
Mm.
Was my reading list.
Your brain's got her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how that started. She felt comfortable enough with me, you know, being like, oh, look, this white person is actually doing the work to dismantle their, you know, white privilege. And like, because we all come from white supremacy if we're white in this country. We really do. And I think we need to recognize that.
Yeah.
Good. Another good way to start is by reading. And anybody out there, if you guys want some reading suggestions, I got you. I got some 5 core books that are really excellent for starting to generate that thought process within your own self. But after that, you know, it just seemed like there was this connection. And a lot of our time is just spent doing like just funny and fun stuff together. And I'll be traveling with her in her European tour at the end of January. Yeah, we're going to 4 different countries. And so I'm really excited. Now,
will she DJ and dance, or is she just doing burlesque there?
Probably both.
Probably both. Yeah. She's very talented. I got to see
yes.
her for brunch 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Yeah. She got me very drunk.
She'll come again on Saturday. She's at 7th West. She's going to be hosting Saturday brunch if you want to come.
I think I'm in. I don't think I have to work.
Oh, you should talk to me after this.
I will. All right. Because that was so much fun.
Yeah. Her brunches are a lot of fun. Yeah. So my girlfriend actually has a brunch residency at Jolene's bar. It's a queer bar in San Francisco, California.
Yeah. And it was fantastic. The food was delicious.
Isn't it great?
Yep. She was a great MC. MC or host. Mm-hmm. And then all the dances were amazing.
Oh, it's so fun.
Oh, yeah. And I've been following them on social media, of course, because I want to see all the dancers, because they change their dancers all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not always the same show, which is really nice. So, yeah, definitely check that out.
Do it.
Maybe you'll run into us there.
Yes. Yes. Come hang out.
Yeah. And so what's like next for you? I mean, now you've manifested love. You're comfortable in your body. Your kid is doing fantastic. Mm-hmm. So what's next for Brenda?
You know, mostly exploring like different adventures and not being so wrapped up in work and being immediate with exploring personal experiences like this trip to Europe. Mm. I want to do more traveling. I want to be able to have more fun.
Mm. Will you go to the Burn again this year?
I won't go to the Burn.
How many years have you gone to the Burning Man?
4. So I've been to 4 of what we would call the big burns, right? The one that's in the dirt rave in Gerlach. And I also do regional. So regional Burning Man, for those of you that don't know, usually like most states and other countries even have their own Burning Man event. So
I didn't know about that until I met you. I haven't, I've known Burning Man like existed, but I didn't know about Burning Man until I moved to California.
It's a lot of fun. I think you should actually like go to a regional. We've got Unscrews, which is our local regional here in Santa Cruz. And then I know that we have another regional down in Los Angeles. There's one in like Arizona, Saguaro Man. Then there's a great one called Love Burn, which is located in Miami, Florida. That's actually a really fun burn to go to. During the pandemic, I think the Burning Man community was really keeping me going. I actually went to Love Burn in 2020, like literally like a month before the world shut down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I did a lot of the regionals also in 2019. Burning Man's a really good way to explore who you are. And usually these are 10 principle events. The 10 principles are basically guidelines or the ethos of a community, right? Things that, you know, we would like people to like explore, like no commodification, like there's no money at a Burning Man event. Everything is gifted, right? Each theme camp, each person may have something to gift. And gifting doesn't have to be something physical. It can be an act of love. It can be an act of anything, an act of goodness. But it really helps people understand what community is as you're forming and building literally the city, And that's the same thing for all the regionals too.
So if someone doesn't know what Burning Man is, will you explain it?
So yeah, it's pretty much an event based on the 10 principles. I would really encourage everybody to go to burningman.org so you can just take a look at what this means. But generally what happens is every year, and it has been this way since like 1986, people go to the desert and then they literally build a community that's self-sustaining and they interact with each other.
It's like DJs and live music, and
there's art cars
and performers and
everything. Basically every single thing that you can think of that could happen in the world is happening in some capacity or another at a Burning Man event.
But it's in the desert, and there's like no electricity, there's
Correct.
no power, there's
you
no
bring
water.
all of your own infrastructure. You bring your own water. You bring your own generator. You bring
like
your own shelter.
Camping.
Yeah, it is. And it's not for the faint of heart. The desert is a very inhospitable environment. I'm sure that if you take a look and you Google, you'll see like all the dust storms that we experienced this past year. But what it's really about is building community and surviving really tough atmospheric conditions. The desert's there to kill you. It's there to break you down. But there's also so much fun and wonder, and all of the big art that's in the middle of the playa is beautiful, and I was watching my girlfriend perform, out there. She would go and DJ, and you get to meet some people that sometimes you meet them again and sometimes you don't, but you have a different experience each and every time. But it really is about building a community. It's about building the city.
Because people will go, a lot of people go year after year. So
they do.
It's like you may only see those people once a year, but you see them for 10 days, and you spend from what I understand, like a life-changing 10 days once a year. Like that's a beautiful relationship.
It's very exciting to see people I haven't seen all year at the event.
Right.
Makes me very excited. It's very serendipitous. You'll have I call it playa magic. Like you'll just have these moments where you could meet like your first grade teacher out there. The city is made of 80,000 people.
Wow.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But you'll just have these moments where everything aligns, like the universe aligns perfectly. And then you'll see these people, or you'll make a connection. Or maybe you saw a piece of art which was really inspiring for you, and it causes you to make big changes in your life. And you might think that seems like it's kind of out there, but it's not. It happens all the time. I've seen people drop everything and go off and do something else. Although we do say please don't make major changes when you return from Burning Man when it comes to relationships, employment, or housing. So give it some time. You got to decompress from having this moment, because you walk into this place, there's no expectations on you. You're basically free to be your own person. And then when you come back to what we call the default world, there's a change that happens where you just feel this sense of loss, where you want your community and you just want to go back to the desert and you want to have that experience again, and you can't. And it's painful. It's disconcerting to be reinserted rudely back into the world.
It's almost like the ultimate life hangover.
It kind of is. Yeah, it kind of is. But it gets you, the things that you have in your Burning Man journey help you explore how to bring that back, I think, to the default world. Like I said, about gifting, maybe you're going to change the way you see gifting. Maybe you'll change the way that you see commodification. Maybe you'll see a difference in, radical self-reliance. Maybe you're going to depend on yourself more. Or maybe you won't have such bad social anxiety when you're by yourself or in groups of people. That's a big takeaway for me. I used to have a lot of hard time being around groups or being alone in groups. Thanks to all the Burning Man things that I do, I don't feel like that as much anymore. I can be in a group of people being the only one there, and I know nobody, and it doesn't bother me anymore, because I'm used to being around strangers. Been around 80,000 strangers at Burning Man, you know? You learn how to exist within yourself. So yeah.
That's an incredible lesson.
I think some people think that it's just a big, rave in the dirt. Well, it is, but they think that's all it is. It's this big, huge, Coachella party. It's not a festival. It's an event. It's an opportunity. It is space for you to explore who you are, explore what community means to you, how you want to build your community, and who you want to be friends with and who you want to have connections with. And there's also volunteer opportunities also to build the city, that are on the org, or sponsored via or like, Gate or Rangers.
Right.
There's always something to do. So if people are like, yeah, I don't want to go ahead and do all this partying stuff, fine, come volunteer. Sign up for Gate Perimeter Exodus. I mean, we have got so much stuff, so many opportunities for people to be involved in any capacity they so choose. We have sober camps. People are like, I have problems with alcohol. How can I be sober? I'm like, there are so many AA meetings out there. There is like sober camps. There's a space for everybody at the Burn.
Well, that's one of the things that I learned, because I always thought the Burn was kind of just a rave in the desert. Like, and then I learned like there's classes and seminars and tea ceremonies. And there's like,
clothing swaps.
Live in what?
Clothing swaps.
Oh,
everything that you can imagine is out there.
And then when I was like, well, that's like there's events going on 24 hours a day for 10 days. That sounds just amazing. And of course, that's got to be life transforming. It's like a 10-day workshop, basically.
Yeah, you're given a guide, what, where, when, and you can look it up and you can see camp names, who's serving food, who's having events, who's DJing, who's doing what at any time on any day.
That sounds amazing.
And the interesting thing is not everybody gets in the directory. And so you might just find something that's really incredible and, off the beaten path just because you decided to wander into J Street and just wanted to get out of camp and see exactly what's going on.
Right.
It's about like being just get up and go. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about the Burn. It does make you more confident about yourself, I think. At least that's what it's done for me. And Burning Man's individual to the person as the event is itself.
Yeah. Of course, I mean 80,000 people aren't going to have the same.
They're not.
And
But yet we all keep coming back in some capacity or another to do this again and again and again. I really like the fact that the regionals exist in other countries and in other states here locally, because you get to take that magic and you get to bring it home to your own communities with your own people, and you can build your own 10 principled event and you can invite your own people. I think having local events is just as important. And the magic is even better. I love the Big Burn. I really love the regionals. I've met a lot of my closest friends at regionals.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I didn't realize that there was Burning Man regionals.
Yep.
I'll definitely look into coming to one of those with you.
Yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, they even have a list on burningman.org. You can take a look at regionals, and they have like a whole listing of the states and the names of the regional events. Same with the different countries, and you can click on the link. Oh, awesome. And then immediately you get redirected in these communities. So if people will be like, "Whoa, I just moved to Santa Fe. I'm in New Mexico. Where can who do I talk to?" And we're like, "Oh, you want to talk to the Sunburn people, right?" And then we can just like link that person with resources or add them to the Facebook group.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because everyone I've met that's done the Burn or goes to Burning Man is really like open, inclusive, and like,
that's the way it should be.
How do I help you? And how do I, like, if I can't help you, let me pass you on to this person that can probably help you.
That's the way it should be.
That you can feel. And I think that's one of the things that maybe permeates a little bit through California is that there's so many burners here that there is that kind of undertone of like the whole place.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what makes California beautiful is the burn and the beach.
There's a lot of things, I think. And the weather.
Well, not lately.
Maybe not today, but...
Although the sun came out today for a little bit.
It did.
It did. And I got like a quick couple miles in during it and just got to spend a little time out in it. And I have to say it helped my mood so much.
I thought it was going to be much worse today.
I did too. Even last night.
Yeah.
The atmospheric river.
A little underwhelming.
A little bit. And I was so excited to have lightning because they kept saying we were going to have like big thunderstorms.
I saw the lightning too last night.
I saw one lightning bolt and that was it.
That's it? I think I saw 3, so I'm not too far behind you.
Yeah. Or ahead of me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess let's check in with you in a while maybe and see how things are going. See how maybe we'll come after we go to a regional and talk about that.
That would be exciting. That'd be a great adventure for us to go on.
Because I haven't been to a sleepaway music festival yet. I've been to some day festivals since I moved out here and they've been so much fun and like kind of changing in big ways. But I really want to go to my first camp out. I was going to go to one and then it got canceled because of the fires.
Oh, boo.
Like one got canceled because of COVID and then one got canceled because of the fires.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. But we'll find our joy. Thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank you so much for having me, Siobhan.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All
Y'all
right.
find your joy. Bye-bye.
Bye.